evening. Yes, good evening, state delegates. Thank you for being here. My name's Larry Myers, and I'm running for U.S. Senate because the federal government has gotten too big, too powerful, it's too much regulating our lives, and we need a senator who will go back to Washington, D.C. and say no more to big government. And so I decided that it's a good time for me to try to be a public servant rather than a career politician like we have back in D.C. that have led us into this crisis that we're in. And I'm going to go back there and I'm going to say no to big government, and I'm going to say yes to limited constitutional government and protecting your rights as Utahns and as United States citizens. So I'm asking for your vote tonight, and I appreciate your service as state delegates. I've been a state delegate myself a number of times, and I'm a big supporter of the caucus system and the convention system. I'm not gathering signatures, I'm just going through the convention, and my goal is to try to win 60% and go on to the primary against Mitt Romney. Because I think that Utah needs a choice, a clear choice, between business as usual and the connections that go on back in Congress that have led us to too much government, too much regulation, too much taxes. And instead, we need someone that is an outsider, a newcomer, someone that's been in the battle for 30 years. Ever since my days at BYU, I have been fighting the conservative fight, and I will fight the conservative fight for you back in Washington, D.C. So let me briefly introduce myself. A lot of you don't know me very well because I'm from St. George, and it's kind of an isolated corner of the state. I met my wife, Marlee, at BYU after my mission, and we came back to BYU to get my law degree. I was in law school with Mike Lee. I was actually 2 years ahead of him in law school, so that's probably about the only thing I'm ahead of him in. But we got to know each other and have been on a friendly basis ever since then. In BYU, one of the things I did was get involved with the College Americans Club. It was a Constitution study group, and we got together regularly and we learned about the Constitution. We brought in scholars to teach us. And then at the law school, I helped start the Federalist Society. Mike Lee and I helped get that going, which is a conservative organization of judges and attorneys. And I was a leader in that organization among my fellow students at the law school. Then I wanted to be a prosecuting attorney, so we went down to St. George. That was the first opportunity I got to be a prosecutor. I served as a prosecutor both for the county and the city for a number of years, and then went into private practice. And so those skills that I've developed as an attorney, I am an advocate for my clients. I fight for their constitutional rights. I fight for their parental rights. I protect them from the power of the government and from others who want to do them harm. And those are skills that I can take back to Washington, D.C. and be an advocate for the Constitution and for your rights.
1 minute.
What's that?
1 minute.
1 minute. Thank you. So I got to apologize. I've been here all evening. I made a commitment to Linda that I would be here because she invited us. But there's an event going on in Davis County, and I appreciate you letting me speak first. I've had a great opportunity to speak with a lot of you tonight. I'll give you my 30-second pitch. Less government, more freedom. Let's cut everything that we can. Let's keep our national defense strong. Let's get the federal government out of education, welfare, health care, all of those things that the federal government should not be doing. I will stand against those if you will vote for me to be your United States Senator and your representative of the delegates in the convention in the primary. Thank you very much, Weber County.
Thank you. Tim, let's start here, and we'll move down the row with the Senate candidates. Thank you.
I'm Tim Jimenez, and standing here while you're all sitting there, I think we're about the same height. I'm not great in stature, but I try and say I'm great in spirit, I guess, and in fight. I'm an environmental engineer, and for those of you who wonder why environmental engineers are Republican, it's because growing up I saw the way that our government punishes industry. I saw the way it punishes all of us. Is this on? Yeah. Hear the sound of my voice. So as I watched the government punish people who are trying to do business, trying to grow jobs, trying to help people like me who grew up in poverty become wealthy and have the American dream, I got disgusted with what I saw. I saw career politicians, people who never worked for a living the way we work, people who had to live paycheck to paycheck, people who have never known what it's like to miss a meal, people who sit up there in Washington, D.C. and they think, oh, this bill's only going to cost the American people a few dollars a month. Before you know it, they nickel-dime us to death. We can't afford to pay our mortgages, chance of losing your car. We don't have control over a lot of our lives. And as we try to live the American dream, not to become millionaires and billionaires, but just to be able to have a comfortable life for our families, we find ourselves crushed, our spirits crushed. I grew up in poverty, like I said. I was the oldest of 6 boys. My parents divorced when I was 12 due to my father's alcoholism. And he's since joined AA and has been sober for 18 years. And is an example of a true hero. My mother is also an example of a hero. When the government told her that it would take care of her and her 6 boys by doing nothing, if she just did nothing, they would pay all of her bills and make her life easy. My mom said no. She was an example of what the American dream is. You're going to work hard, and you're going to teach those principles to your children, and then those children are going to teach it to their children. I worked from the age of 12 on, any kind of job I could to support my family. I was in charge of my 5 younger brothers. I learned a lot about what it's like to be an adult at a young age. I learned what it's like to take responsibility for our actions. I think the problem in Washington, D.C. is these people haven't taken responsibility for their actions. They foist off the ability to legislate, to control, to agencies. And they let the agencies write the rules and regulations. As an environmental engineer working in the industry, I can tell you right now, I don't think our senators have ever seen any of the rules and regulations that they allow to go through. I have to deal with the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the BLM, all these other agencies, a bunch of alphabet soup every day, just so that my clients can create jobs here in the state of Utah. In October, I'd had enough of it. I talked to my wife and we decided to file. So in January, I think I was the first to file, only through the convention system because it's a system I believe in. I didn't join this fight to say, oh, we got to go against Mitt Romney or we got to fight Orrin Hatch. I joined this opportunity to run a senator because I got tired of not being represented. I have to fight every day just to help people create jobs. That's ridiculous. This is the United States of America. Why can't we start to work back and repeal these things? I'm not going to stand here as a politician. I'm an engineer. I don't want to give you political spin and a bunch of lies like everyone else. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm an engineer. I have to tell you the truth and the facts the way they are.
1 minute.
Thanks. Kind of interrupt you. It's okay. We're not going to be able to just snap our fingers like that and pass a magic bill that gives us all of our lands back and gets rid of the regulatory state. This has been 120, 130 years in the process to get here through the progressive movement. We need to logically and slowly work back. There's things we can do that are quick and easy that will be able to help rural Utah and the rest of us grow. And as we build momentum and repealing small rules and regulations, the agencies will start to shrink because the states will start to have those authorities. Before we know it, through attrition, we've gotten rid of the agencies. We can change the way that we have to permit for any work in a riparian corridor. It takes a year or more sometimes to get a permit just to do work near a wetland. Well, we can approve that at the state level in a few weeks. And we have to go to the federal level and wait for a year for them to tell us, no, we can't do that. Well, in a changing economy, in a fast-paced economy, we can't wait a year for a permit to go through. We need it approved now. We can start repealing small little legislative pieces, build some momentum, and work our way into prosperity. We don't have to sit around and try and depend on politicians to politician some kind of answer. We can actually engineer a solution. I'm Tim Jimenez. If you go to my website, tim4utah.com, you can learn more about me and who I am and how I believe I can actually represent the people of the state of Utah, the place where I live.
Thank you.
I do live.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Jenkins, and I know you guys are all thinking my name is Abraham Lincoln, but it's not. But in 2006, I ran against Orrin Hatch, and we got to the Republican convention, and I got 17%. Since then, that was considered a successful run. He was a man who was a juggernaut, and I was disappointed, but and after that, we ran for House, and then ran for a national delegate, and I was elected as a national delegate. I was elected as a state central committee. Anyway, some of you guys are probably wondering if I'm a serious candidate or not, if I'm doing a Lincoln look-alike thing, or if I'm actually running for Congress or for the Senate. But we needed some way to get past the normal bottleneck that happens with the media. It's almost impossible to get past that. And so I really wasn't planning to run for Senate this time around either, but a whole bunch of people said, you know what? We think you might be able to win. You ran for Senate, I'd vote for you. Well, in most respects, I'm just this normal Utah kid. I grew up in southern Utah, a little tiny Bayou County, a little tiny town called Circleville, and then I went to Brigham Young University, and then I went on a mission to Japan, and then I came back, and in a lot of ways, just like all the rest of you. And ran into a guy by the name of Cleon Skousen, who explained the way that the Constitution works. He's considered one of the great constitutional thinkers on the planet. And so, little by little, I just started thinking, you know, maybe there's a way to make a difference. Maybe we could get people to understand the principles of freedom. Maybe we could get a return to the Constitution. And so, I have been thinking, you know, I'll bet there's a way. So, let me paint a little bit of a picture as to why I'm running this kind of a unusual campaign. So, obviously, when I first signed up, filed to run, filed as Abe Lincoln Bryan Jenkins. So I thought, they're going to clap me in irons or put me in a straitjacket. But people throughout the state are noticing, and they notice that I'm presenting a return to the Constitution. What I'm really trying to do is get this message out. So Abraham Lincoln had a platform. He had a position. He had the things that he taught, his ideas. He taught a return to God. I don't think any of those candidates could say that, but Abraham Lincoln could say that. He could say, you know, I think we need to return to God. And he could say, you know, I think we should return to sound money. He printed up a whole bunch of money because the South had a whole bunch of money. Abraham, the North didn't have it. The South was funded by Britain. The North didn't have any money. How much time do I have? 1 minute. Man, I'm out of time. We can return to sound money. We don't even think about it anymore. We don't think that's where we should be. One candidate who could start to rally people throughout the state, even if it's just because of the way he looks. One candidate could go back to Washington and make a difference there. That one candidate, one senator, could even make a difference right here in Utah. There are things that you need to know about our loss of legitimate voting at the state Republican convention. We lost it there. I'm going to have that posted on Abe Lincoln for Utah. And also what happened as we lose our power to vote at the national convention, I'm the national delegate. It's hard for us for our vote to be counted when it's not, when there's no paper trail. Everyone knew that it wasn't legitimate. We got an anonymous donation in 2012 to implement electronic voting. We have not known since then whether we had a legitimate vote or not. There's some things we got to do. We're going to need some help. I'm begging for you guys' help. We can turn this around. My name is Bryan Jenkins, running for U.S. Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Is this on? Thank you. My name is Jeremy Friedbaum, and it was a leap of faith to file for the Senate race. I knew taking on Mitt Romney would be a difficult challenge, but I never expected to have to debate Abraham Lincoln. My being here is a miracle. My grandparents got married by matchmakers in Russia, as you might have seen in the film Fiddler on the Roof. Their marriages, my parents didn't perceive as being that happy. And so both my parents left the Orthodox Judaism they were born into. I was raised as a Jewish atheist in New York. That may sound like an oxymoron, but it's not. Most Jews in New York are atheists. And I didn't believe in God. In third grade, New York public school, the teacher said, well, there used to be a lot of things about why it rained and why the season changed, and they had a lot of gods to explain that, and then they had kind of just one God to explain that. But now science has told us what makes these things happen, and God is kind of a superstition we don't need anymore. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And I proceeded to run my life without having, under the principle was called moral relativism, that whatever suits you is moral. It's a strange thing. And so by the time I was almost 20 years old, I had sinned to such excess that my soul sickened of it. And I went to a Christian church just to go for a drive with a friend, or with the 53rd chapter of Hosea Acts. And as I read it, I've been humbled to get to this point. The Spirit of God entered me and let me know absolutely, just as the light fell on Paul, that there was a God, Jesus Christ, as the Son, my Savior. My life changed like that. And you know, the biggest change was that up to that point, I thought I had to decide what was right and wrong. And I started, do I this, do I do that, do I do this? And it was, I wouldn't want to tell you the decisions I made. But they were wishy-washy. They weren't evil. But now I knew there was a God. And there was a right and a wrong. And He loved me. And He understood humanity. And by following His commandments, I could be happy. I could have joy. About 2 weeks later, I finished the Old Testament, started the New Testament. Was moved by Jesus Christ. And I knelt down and said, Lord, please guide me. Help me be a part of this team. Help me make the world the way it wants to be. And in the middle of that prayer, there was a knock at the door. It was more missionaries, and here I am today. But something else happened 22 years ago when I brought my mother out to take care of her, which was a great thing, by the way. All right? It says, honor thy mother and father. That doesn't mean yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Honor in the Old Testament has to do with money. So honor thy mother and father means you take care of them when they get old. And your life will be extended. Greatest thing I ever did. Anyhow, I broke apart when my mother died. And I couldn't watch comedy. I couldn't watch drama because everything was depressing. So I went to C-SPAN. And Alan Keyes was speaking about how if you believe in God, you believe in commandments, you should be a constitutional conservative. You should believe in the Constitution and the founding principles. I didn't know what they were. So I studied them for 2 years, and I came out, and I had the same idea that I did about God and religion. There is a right and wrong. And that right and wrong is the founding principles of the Constitution. So you'll see with my answers tonight, my answers are based on those principles. I believe in the right and a wrong, not a right and a left. And I will stand up for the constitutional principles of the founding. I'll do everything to get back there. Thank you.
Wow, I don't know if I should give a closing prayer or a speech now. Thanks, man. I feel a little like Phil Donahue with this wireless mic, right? Listen, my name is Sam Parker, Weaver County, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate. Raise your hand if you've heard of me. Okay, let's try that again. I'm Sam Parker, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate. Who's heard of me? All right, that's a little better. Okay, there we go. Listen, I saw something interesting today online. Somebody talked about the fiscal irresponsibility of the government, or how they had bad management of our money. And we've all heard that phrase so many times, right? That the government wastes our money. But for some reason, this time, it hit me that phrase is such a euphemism. It's such a sanitized lie. They don't mismanage our money. They steal and ruin our lives. And this is what I mean.
Yeah.
The money that they have came from us. It came from the 9 hours you worked today, the sacrifices you made for your kids, the labor you put in at your job, the time, the effort, the blood, the sweat, the tears. that you spend every day, minute by minute, hour by hour, day in and day out, and they take it from us. And then they give it to somebody else that didn't make it or doesn't deserve it, or maybe it's some tin god dictator. Or maybe they waste it on their crony buddies and give them fat government contracts. I don't care what it is. It's wasted so many ways, and it's an insult to every single one of us. They literally take our lifeblood, our life force, and squander it and waste it. They take our rights. They trample on our rights. You know, people have been talking about the Constitution. Yeah, they trample on the Constitution too. But they trample on us. Each of us, right now, we're getting trampled. And that's just, I don't know, it's just something that struck me today when I heard that they're mismanaging our money. They're not just mismanaging our money, they're ruining and damaging our lives. It's an insult to every one of us. You know, and frankly, I'm sick of it. You know, 2 years ago and last year, I was sitting in your seat, I was a state delegate. And I got really involved in the local Utah politics. You know, I've always felt that I was fairly well informed of what was going on, but I found out, as I'm sure you're finding out now, that as a state delegate, you become 10 times, 20 times more informed than you thought you were. Maybe you thought you were informed, but you really weren't, right? And now you're getting informed. Well, so that's kind of how I felt. Well, now that I'm running, I'm like, wow, it's like 10 times past that. But I was tired of sitting on the sidelines. I was tired of sitting on my couch and watching some talking head on the TV or some voice on the radio, some politician insulting us, lying to us, day in and day out with every sentence that they speak. What an insult to us! They'll get up and give a 15-minute speech, and every sentence is a lie or an exaggeration. It's insulting, and I'm tired of that. And we're better than that. So I decided to get into this race and see what I could do. And I'm here to tell you, I'm in it to win it. How much time do I have left? 1 minute. Here's my quick 1 minute pitch. There's an elephant in this room, or rather there's an elephant not in this room, and you know what I'm talking about. He's going to be on the ballot in June no matter what because he's collecting signatures. Now, state delegates, I'm here to tell you that it will not serve our system if you advance him with over 60% of the vote in the convention in April. Okay? I know that you're supposed to vote your conscience and vote for who you think the best candidate will be, but in this particular situation, we have a system to uphold. And it's a system that ensures we have the best candidate who's also prepared, whose feet are held to the fire, who has to make commitments and promises to us by which we can measure his performance and hold him accountable. He's made no public promises. There's no position statements on his website. And if we pass him through the convention with over 60% of the vote, he'll be on his way to getting elected without having had to make any public promises. I don't want to send a public servant to Washington under those pretenses, and I hope you won't either. Please join me. I want to put America first. America is not a global welfare policy. It's for its citizens. We're a country of citizens. I want to make American government local again. I want to go to Washington and be a wrecking ball to that illegitimate power and take your money, your value, and your lives and rights back and give it to you and restore your power of self-determination. Okay, go to my website, samparkersenate.com, learn more about me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, 19 trillion and what do you get? No, 21 trillion and what do you get? Another baby older and deeper in debt. Taxes and interest from shore to shore. The Federal Reserve is the biblical the company store. Maybe you heard me sing that. I sang that at the 2012 state nominating. Thank you very much. Well, maybe I won't go into singing. But anyway, that is the gusher. That's the valve that needs to be shut off. We're under a debt-based system. Trillions to borrow. It's always available. We could borrow $100 trillion. Alan Greenspan says we can always pay our debts because we can always print more money. Well, we're not printing money. I called the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing and I says, who gets the paper money that's printed? The Federal Reserve creates the digital money. The Mint, U.S. Mint creates the coins. We haven't been taught what issuing money is. And they said, is this being recorded? And I said, no, it wasn't. And they said, well, we have one exclusive customer. And I was reminded that a $100 bill costs about 15 cents in paper and ink to produce. So there's a $99.85 profit for someone if they're getting it at cost. Well, guess what? There is a group of people, they're exclusive customers, she told me. Right from the Bureau, we have one exclusive customer. It's the Federal Reserve, which a lot of us know is a privately owned institution. It's supposed to be nonprofit. And they get to buy all the money at cost of paper and ink. Well, that's a pretty good deal. I wish I had that kind of a deal. So there are literally trillions of people, trillionaires walking around. I was able to go to Washington, D.C. I called Alan Grayson's office on the phone, and I called Mike Lee's office. Alan Grayson, some of you may know, is extreme opposite of Mike Lee. They both consented to meet with me about this issue. I'm promoting my new Constitution booklet that if we read like a contract and recognize the amendments for what they are, further declaratory and restrictive clauses to the Constitution, we will see that we have been hoodwinked. Ron Paul was going around sounding crazy, the $1.6 trillion, the debt was fictitious because they created out of thin air and then loan it to us. Well, that's exactly what's happening. The whole federal debt has a huge problem, and if we don't go back and shut this gusher off, can you imagine calling people into your home, plumbers, when your basement is flooding and they come in with sponges? That's what we're doing. We're sending sponges to Washington, D.C. We need to go in and shut the valve off. It's called public awareness. Jefferson said education is the key. I'm working with a company that has the ability to distribute 250 semi-tractor trailers full of magazines that have these concepts that expose the Federal Reserve System and has the Constitution, an explanation of how it is a contract and how the amendments have never been recognized as amending anything, but now this publication would do it. 250 tractor trailers full of the magazine with these concepts in it. 10,888 1,700-pound pallets to go to 137 million mail stops. That's businesses, that's homes, and that's mailboxes. And so I want to go to Washington, D.C. and help. I would find those who would be decent enough to understand this and get together on both sides of the aisle. I've proven that we can do that. And then help America become aware of the biggest problem we have in this country. And that's, we don't know what the proper issuing of money is. And if we understand that, and understand the constitutional spending clauses within Article 1, Section 8 that the Congress has, we can get this back. With enough awareness, we can do what this book says. 7 discoveries everyone should know in the U.S. Constitution, power to fund the USA without taxation. That's one of the 7 discoveries. The books are available at 7discoveries.com. That's my website if you'd like to get one from me. My manager said no, and I said I'd like to give everyone a free copy. He says they would appreciate it much more if they bought them. But I'm trying to raise money for the campaign, but if you'd like one of these, see me, and even if you don't have money, I'd be happy to give whatever I have to those who would really like to take a look at this. So 7discoveries.com. Thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Loy Brunson, L-O-Y, Brunson, B-R-U-N-S-O-N. I'm one of the most famous four-brother trumpet players in the world because we were the only four-brother trumpet group, I think, that got on the Tonight Show, got on Christmas in Washington with President Reagan, so I got to meet him. And Ronald Reagan's chief of staff has endorsed my book, Ron Mann.
Thank you.
And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Kennedy, and I'm running for U.S. Senate. I'm a family doctor. I'm an attorney. I'm also a state legislator. I've served in the Utah House of Representatives for the past 6 years. By the way, KennedyForUtah.com is my website. Mike Kennedy is the name. It's a good political name. And my cell number is 801-358-2362. There's a lot of talk on a campaign. Lots of people say things, and everybody's got an opinion. But there's only certain people that actually do something. Washington is full of problems. The reality is, for my whole life, I've been working on solving problems. I grew up poor. I grew up in a family that we had 2 homes. My parents were divorced. And I know what it's like to balance a budget. I know what it's like to not have money. And I know what average Utahns are struggling with. Meeting budgets, working for a living. That's what I've been doing since I was 12 years old. And it's been a privilege because as a kid walking around pushing my lawnmower and raking leaves, I had the opportunity to learn that nothing comes easily. So what does that do in a person's life? It results in a kid that goes to college, and then of all things he decides he wants to go to medical school. He gets out of medical school and goes to a residency, and he learns family doctoring, preventative care, how to serve people and understand their needs and try to help them. And then he gets a bee in his bonnet, and he thinks he might want to go to law school, of all things, just as he's about to move into professional life. And I asked my wife if that was all right. She said, "I'm not going with you." I said, "Really?" And she said, "Oh no, I'll do that. My wife's outstanding. We have 8 children together. We've raised them here in the state of Utah." So I went back to BYU and got a law degree. And I did that because gathering those skills allowed me to have a different perspective on life. I'm a problem solver. That's what I've done for my whole life. I try to build consensus, build alliances where I can build them. And if I don't have agreements or alliances, then I respectfully disagree with those that I work with. And we together try to get things done. I'm a man of integrity. I have integrity in my office when I serve my people. And I believe our political leaders, they need to remember us when they vote, not just when we do. I'm tired of their promises on the campaign trails that they do not fulfill when they're in the seat of power. I'm a man who understands healthcare, and I've actually helped in the state legislature to make sure Obamacare was not implemented in this state. And if you wanted Obamacare, then they sent the wrong person, because I fought, along with many others in the state legislature, to make sure Obamacare was not implemented fully in this state. And that has saved us a lot of money and a lot of trouble as that disastrous plan has unfolded. And I'm a person, because of my legal and medical backgrounds, that can actually work for free market reforms in healthcare to make sure it's high quality care and low cost. In the state of Utah, we need leaders who understand what it's like to balance a budget and raise a family in Utah. I've lived here for 20 years. We've raised our family in Utah, and I love this place. It's been a privilege for my wife and I to raise our family in this state. We also need leaders who understand that it's not helping others when we give them a handout. We need to give them a hand up. And we need leaders, most of all, to remember we are one nation under God, and that together we can accomplish more than we can if we're divisive and fighting with one another.
1 minute.
My name is Mike Kennedy, and I'm running for U.S. Senate. And I would be honored to have your support. And I hope you can look me up at kennedyforutah.com, the cell number 801-358-2362. Thank you for your service as delegates.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the first congressional district, and let's start with Chad.
Good evening. My name is Chadwick Fairbanks III, and I am campaigning for the U.S. House District Number 1 up here in northern Utah. A lot of good points have been brought up. There's a lot of segues that we can go down. I'd like to start with a tweet from Senator Rand Paul last week regarding a lot of these issues that have been brought up. And he mentioned that it was a good thing that there's a Republican Congress, a Republican Senate, and a Republican White House, because it would be a shame if we spent $1.3 trillion on Obamacare and Planned Parenthood and all kinds of a litany of democratic issues that want to be funded. And then he said, oh, wait. So, of course, there's a disconnect, there's a problem. You hear a lot about federal overreach, states' rights, right? You're hearing lots of platitudes. I think it's funny that our Republican platform is the perfect prescription to run a constitutional republic, but somehow it's not being executed in DC, it's not being followed, and that's an important question that you as delegates need to ask yourselves, is why do we keep nominating and sending the same people over and over again? We have the answers, and they're not being followed. So, I'm proposing a very aggressive 10th Amendment platform. All right, my website's www.chadwick4utah.com. And to give you some examples of some issues that we've had that relate to 10th Amendment rights, states' rights, nullification, this is how we're going to fix Washington. Washington's not going to fix itself, right? The states need to step up, okay? James Madison wrote about it. All the founders were very adamant. Nullification, anything that comes out of the House or the Senate, even if the president signs it, it's dead on arrival if it contravenes the United States Constitution, which most of everything that gets done does. And so a good example of a 10th Amendment issue that could have avoided a lot of problems for Utah the Outdoor Retailers Association left the state and took about $1 billion of economy with them. And I take issue with that. That's a big deal. And that was over the public lands, Bears Ears, national monuments, right? The state of Utah already passed a bill. It's HB 148, the Transfer of Public Lands Act. The governor signed it in 2012, and nothing ever happened with it to it. The Utah delegation in Congress that was in charge, I think chairing the Committee on Public Lands, was in a perfect position to help out the state, and that didn't happen. And that could have prevented a $1 billion loss to the economy. So that's an example of states not stepping up and doing what they're supposed to. It's an example of DC failing us. And you as delegates need to vet candidates that are going to go and do these things and basically return power back to the states. Withdraw compliance from unconstitutional systems and governance. There's, back to the Federal Reserve, gentlemen, that's a big part of the problem too. And so, again, Utah's leading the way. Utah's a great state. The Utah delegation should be leading the country from DC, but also as a state, we should be leading the rest of the country as well. Utah's passed some sound money bills. I don't know if you guys are aware of these. HB 157, HB 317, basically making gold and silver legal tender. Now HB 224 got defeated. That would have created a gold and silver repository like how Texas has done. But these kind of bills need to be passed at the state. We need to start competing with the Federal Reserve, create a reverse Gresham's effect, which is basically make the Federal Reserve compete, right? And good money will chase out bad money, and that will solve a lot of the problems in DC. And that's just one example of states' rights, where we can start executing things at the state level and nullifying all the garbage in DC. Again, it's chadwick4utah.com. Reach out to me, send an email, chadwick4utah@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You get the benefit. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here. I'm very grateful that all of you have decided to become delegates to the system. The delegate system in a convention, I think, is a very appropriate way because you people are not bought off by sound bites. You want to see something that's much more deeper, much more intellectual, and I appreciate that kind of opportunity for the 1,000 members of the 1st District that have been elected as delegates for this state convention. So thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing and being a part of the process and part of the system. It means a great deal. I am still the chairman of the Resource Committee, and I'm also ranking member on the Armed Services Committee in Washington. It means, unfortunately, I don't get to have on my way all the time. It's a whole lot better if I did. But it does mean that I'm in a situation where I can stop stuff that is bad for the state of Utah coming forward. That's one of the things I want to go forward with as well. The speakers also put me on a task force that's supposedly about federalism. We're trying to come up with ways in which we can move more decisions back to the states. But also,
attention library patrons, the last shuttle to the main library in downtown Austin will be
I don't need a shuttle, go ahead.
Please find your transactions according to. Thank you.
We'll extend your time.
That's okay. I have my car, I don't need the shuttle. That's the way it is. Now, but with that, I also want to do some changes with some of the processes that we had in the legislature and Congress right now. One of the things that is so important to me is we have an administration right now that is making some good changes, that the agencies are making good changes. But I feel a whole lot of responsibility that if we don't make them statutory, then the next administration that comes in can reverse everything back to the way it was. That means we have to do something right now. I don't care how it has to be done. That's the responsibility I have. We have to actually get those into statute, not just simply into rule and regulation again. It also means that there are some pluses and a lot of minuses. The pluses are in the military especially. And the military, we have finally turned the corner after a decade, especially this last administration, having 4 major cuts to military funding and 2 major manpower reductions that truly threaten our military preparedness, as well as our ability to have a foreign policy with a lousy military. We have turned turned the corner in a bicameral and a bipartisan way. The budget that we actually passed for the military was good. For the first time, we have started to rebuild the infrastructure that we have lost over the last administration, but more importantly, we're actually starting to look for manpower. We are 2,000 pilots short for the Air Force, but we're 8,000 maintainers short. Doesn't matter how many planes we have if we don't have the personnel that's going to maintain them so that they can be used for the defense of this country. Those are the things we are doing well back in Washington. The other stuff I'm not that crazy about, to be honest with you. And part of the problem is procedure. Now, I realize when I talk process, your eyes glaze over, but John Dingell, who served for 60 years, once used to say, if I let you make the policy, you let me do the procedure, I'll screw you over every time. The procedure has caused this last omnibus fiasco. So those of you running for the Senate, please get rid of the filibuster. That is the tool that Schumer used to force all the bad stuff that was put into the last bill. It's not just the Senate's fault. That's the other thing I'm going to use that task force that Ryan put me on. We have to change the appropriations process on the House as well. Both of those have to take place. I want to go back there to do that. I want to go back there to continue my 100% pro-life voting record. The Second Amendment will be under attack. I will not stomach that. As a teacher, I don't want the federal government into education. I know they create more problems than they solve, especially when they start to deteriorate on parental rights in education. I want to stand firm on that. And with that, I want to thank you once again for taking the time to be involved in this process. I appreciate you being